Hey everybody, good evening and welcome into a Friday edition of KC Sports Tonight. I am Mark Poulose, joined by Gabe Swartz for the first time in a long time. Gabe, it's good to see you. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about because the Chiefs, it's a preseason Red Friday, and Gabe, I didn't think of this until just now. Where's the red?
I didn't think about it this morning either, which shows you that I am not in mid-season form.
Well, say it's behind you. You're getting away with this. And I'm actually just looking at our slate that we have here. And I was the only person out of Neil, Marlia, myself, and Katie Marr that was smart enough to wear red in that thing. So I'm always ready for a
Pat
Red
yourself
Friday.
On the back.
Yeah, hey, you don't have to be ready if you stay ready. That's just how it is. All right, but we have 5 great things to talk about today with the Chiefs taking on the Arizona Cardinals tomorrow in the preseason opener on the road at the Cardinals, and then we're going to end it with the Royals taking on the Twins this weekend. But big news, everyone's excited. Football is back here in Kansas City. We are officially about a little more, or 26 hours out, 25 and a half hours out from kickoff. I know it's just the first preseason game of the season, but here in Kansas City, we are always excited for Chiefs football. Gabe, let's just start it there. It's a preseason game. The starters are probably only going to play a series. But are you excited?
I am excited. I like that I've been joking on the news desk. We have the KCTV fact check series.
Yes.
And some of those things we do for some pretty serious stories, but I think that it can be applied to the sports section of things as well at times. And the statement that we get the final training camp practice before the first preseason game every single year from Andy Reid is always worth a very simple fact check of when he says that each quarterback is going to get a quarter. Well, unless it is a long drive, which it usually is not, even though the Chiefs in previous years have typically gotten a first down or a couple of first downs, or even I think a couple years ago in Chicago they drove down and scored a touchdown on their first drive. Usually it's just one series for Patrick Mahomes. Then it becomes Gardner Minshew, and if anything, in the first preseason game, there's a decent extended portion of time where Chris Oladokun usually gets some playing time late third quarter into the fourth quarter. So even if we're not going to pput it out.
Are you saying the KCTV5 fact check said Andy Reid was not telling the truth?
I wouldn't say not telling the truth as much as he was. It's like a half truth, I guess.
Hey, that's why you guys stay with KCTV5, because we are always holding people accountable.
There we go.
Even if it's the first preseason game of the season and we know Patrick Mahomes is good at football, we're going to hold Coach Reid to that fact check standard. All right, but we got a couple topics to talk about today. The first one is going to be the Chiefs offense, because ever since the end of the Super Bowl, we have heard so much. It's almost gotten to the point where it's annoying, like it's a tired storyline, but the Chiefs want to go deep. And then all training camp long, we've gone up there and we've heard them say that we got to emphasize this at practice. We got to emphasize this at practice. And by all accounts up there, it really looks like they have. They really are pushing the ball downfield, even with Rashee Rice out, with Hollywood Brown out, dealing with some injuries right here. They're still trying to push the ball downfield. Gabe, this is going to be our first chance to see it in a game where Patrick Mahomes has a chance to get sacked. The backup quarterbacks have a chance to get sacked. Do you think the Chiefs are going to be able to showcase that, or at least the starters, within one drive, or do you think they're just going to keep it vanilla and they're not going to show any of that?
That's a great question, because I've been kind of bouncing it around in my head kind of the whole week and thinking about it for this game in particular, of the Chiefs don't want to put things on film that other teams haven't seen, but you don't necessarily have to run like the most complex concepts to just have Xavier Worthy or Tyquan Thornton run a go, give him a go ball. And if it maybe, because part of me is like, okay, is that really necessary? Is that really what you want to work on? Is that really the way you want to get a couple snaps out of Patrick Mahomes in the preseason, in the first game of the preseason, where you know he's only going to play one series? Well, what if he goes 3 and out the first series and it's only 3? Whatever. It's not a huge deal. But wouldn't, like, if we come back here and Saturday night you're on KC Sports Tonight live at 10:35 p.m. or 10:30 p.m.
What a plug from the company man, Gabe Swartz. I love it.
But are we going to have Mark Poulose out here being like, you know what? First play of the preseason, Xavier Worthy went 70 yards over the top. Is that the thing that would get defenses to finally like back up a little bit and free up the Chiefs' offense, because it feels like we've now seen, 2 years of this where defenders have been so close to the line of scrimmage and the Chiefs are just dinking and dunking their way down the field, and that was exemplified by all of what we saw all last season. So part of me really wants to see that, but the realist in me knows that it's unlikely, even though it would be awesome to see, and that's kind of what we saw at the end of the Super Bowl when it truly didn't matter, was just Mahomes saying, whatever, I'm just gonna throw it deep and give Xavier Worthy a chance. If we get one of those tomorrow night, that would be exciting, but it's not what I expect.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited to kind of see how maybe this all plays out, because I know a lot of fans last year were really frustrated just with the way that the offense looked in general. But I mean, there were two big problems with the Chiefs' offense. They couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes, and they had wide receivers that were injured. I think if you put those two factors together, you're going to get what we got last year, an unexplosive offense where they have to manage the game, control the ball, and that's how they're going to win football games. I think a big positive out of the last season is that we found out that Patrick Mahomes can win games basically with two hands tied behind his back and without any protection and without any receiver. So this year, I'm really excited to see how he looks behind this offensive line, because I know the other day at training camp, they were talking about the deep ball, but he was talking about the offensive line and trust, because he basically was saying, if you read between the lines, that he did not trust the offensive line last year, so he didn't feel like he could go deep, because he's like, if you want to be an elite quarterback in this league, you've got to be a guy that's willing to stand in the pocket, take some hits, and make those throws, and so much of that is trust in your offensive line that, maybe if you stay in that pocket for an extra beat, that you're going to be protected for that beat, and you can get that throw off. So with that, kind of leads right into our next question. The guy that they brought in that's really kind of solved, at least from the outside looking in, without any snaps being played, without any preseason games, the guy that looks like he solved all their problems is left tackle first-round pick Josh Simmons, because just with him there, kind of really earning that one spot on the left side. I mean, I think we have to say that he earned it, because every OTAs he was there working, training camp, he's just taken the first snap there with the first team and has not given that up. They paid a guy $20 million to come in this year, and Jalen Moore to be a tackle, and Josh Simmons is like, I'm a rookie, and I'm not letting anyone take that spot. I'm not going to let anyone touch Mahomes. So I don't really know how much we're going to see out of him on tomorrow, Gabe, but what do you want to see out of Josh Simmons tomorrow?
I would hope that he plays at least the first series that Patrick Mahomes does not play. I think that it's important that last year there was so limited snaps for Kingsley when he was attempting to play left tackle, and I think in hindsight that was a problem. It's not the reason that he failed. Like, there were inherent issues with the way that he was able to play left tackle as a rookie in the NFL that were going to be exposed at some point. Week 2 became that point based on the training camp and the preseason that they provided him and what it went through. But I hope that Josh Simmons gets at least the first series with Mahomes plus a series with Gardner Minshew, because I think that it's important that he gets some NFL reps under his belt. And I think that the Chiefs would have learned from last season, and that's not to compare the two players, because I think that by all accounts, Josh Simmons is a much better player, a much better prospect than Kingsley was, and that's why he was in conversations for being a top 10, a top 15 pick before he got injured at Ohio State last season, and why even with the injury, he was still a first-round pick, whereas Kingsley was a late second-round pick and a guy who, even when the Chiefs drafted him, people were like, well, yeah, you can bet on his athleticism and all of these kinds of things, but it's not a sure thing. All of those points were made. I think to your point about Patrick Mahomes and trusting the deep ball and Josh Simmons and how that kind of plays into it, it is so incredibly important that pans out, because last season they got below average tackle regardless of who was playing, whether it was Kingsley, whether it was Wanya Morris, whether it was Joe Thuney playing out of position. It was below average tackle, and I can think of two plays in particular that summed up the entire issue where, yeah, Patrick Mahomes was a little more freed up, and maybe he didn't realize that it was as big of a problem in week 2 when he hit Rashee Rice for whatever, like 40-plus yard touchdown down the sideline. That's before that he realized that he wasn't going to be protected, and it looked a lot more comfortable, and there was there was Rashee Rice on the field, which helps, and B, he was confident. Then I think of a play in whatever it would have been, week 9, 10, middle of the season, as the Chiefs are having a ton of problems at tackle and Wanye's playing on a bad knee and such. Patrick Mahomes has time. Xavier Worthy beats a guy deep against the Broncos, and Patrick Mahomes throws the ball with poor footwork, and the ball sails out of bounds, and people are like, man, even when Xavier Worthy gets open, they're missing on the deep ball. And it was just because the timing wasn't there and the trust wasn't there to stand in the pocket and do all those things. And so all of that is just to say that this is incredibly important. And to answer your question, I hope that he gets the first series after Gardner Minshew or after Patrick Mahomes leaves the game, just to get some snaps under his feet and get ready for next week in week 2, and then be ready for the season, because we know that Andy Reid doesn't play starters in the third game of the preseason.
See, this is why Gabe is so good to have on the show, because of such an observant eye. Speaking about that deep ball that he threw against the Broncos, where his footwork simply was not there. The other day, we're talking to offensive coordinator Matt Nagy up at training camp, and they were talking about how they're going to get dialed in and try to get the offense kind of unlock more of the skill set. And he's like, we're working from the hips down.
Yep.
That's where the consistency is going to come. He's like, all these quarterbacks have different releases, but there's so much. Like you see Patrick like out there at camp, he's working on his drops. I mean, this is one of the best quarterbacks in the history of football. And what's he working on out there? His footwork, like 3-step, 5-step, even longer. Like it's incredible to watch this guy. And then sometimes, like you see him, he gets a pass off and he gets very frustrated. Like it'll be a complete pass, but he knows that it probably wasn't good enough for in a game, in a regular season with defenders, and he gets mad and kind of redoes it. But back to the conversation, how we started this all with Josh Simmons. I have been a little bit trying to temper fans' expectations just about Simmons, because I feel like a lot of Chiefs fans, I mean, everything that we're hearing about Josh Simmons is about the best that you could ever hear about this guy. Like we're hearing, like his knee was way better, and then he was performing at camp, and then he was starting with the ones, and then he's never given up. He's been the only guy with the ones at left tackle. It's going to be his first game, a real game against real competitors in a long, long time, going up against the Arizona Cardinals. So I'd like to see him get a little extended playing time, and also see, because so much of this when you're coming back from an injury is, do you trust it? Like,
yeah,
when it really matters, and we're going to have to see. But I will say, good news about that trust is, like, I mean, up there at camp, like, he has the respect of these guys. Like, you see them do their one-on-one drills. Like, after these guys go up against Josh Simmons, like, they dap him up, they give him the handshakes, they pat his helmet. Like, he's earned a lot of that respect. I mean, you look at him, he's in the face. I mean, he's a big guy in the face, though. He looks like a really young guy, 22 years old. And I mean, there's some big bad dudes out there at Chiefs training camp. And like the other day, it was very interesting to see. Like Chris Jones just walked right up to Josh Simmons, like, and they were just chatting before practice. And I'm like, that's an all-pro, like, cutting it up with a rookie. Very, very cool to see that, which leads right into our next topic of conversation, the 2025 Chiefs defense. We know defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, I think we can make an argument, a very strong argument, that he is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL this last hiring cycle. I was extremely surprised to see that. I mean, he got some interviews, but I mean, to me, like, look at what the Chiefs defense has done over the last couple of years. I mean, this guy, you'd think that you want to pick a coordinator from one of the best teams in the league to become a head coach, maybe not pick some coordinators that some of these other teams are picking, but hey, that's good news for us here in Chiefs Kingdom, because Spags is really dialing up some new defenses, and that starts with a lot going on in the back end with safety Justin Reed leaving. We're seeing some new pieces along the defensive line with some draft picks. Nick Bolton is returning. We know Spags is happy about that. We're hearing Trent McDuffie might move back inside. Gabe, there's a lot of things going on here with the defense. George Karlaftis just got a new big deal, so I'm sure he's going to be getting a lot of focus. What are your kind of expectations for the defense as a group in 2025? I know last year they performed really, really well at a top 5 unit. Do you think they can do that again?
I think so. I think that there's a lot of cohesiveness in terms of there's not as much change. There's not as foundational of a change as there is on offense, where you're changing left tackles again and you're hoping to solidify that, and you're bringing back Rashee Rice and all those kinds of things. On the defense, it's a lot of the same stuff, and there's a couple changes. Like you would hope that Omar Norman-Lott is a contributor this season. You would hope that Ashton Gelati is maybe a contributor this season, but there's a reason that the Chiefs spent their first round pick on the offensive side of the ball, and they didn't spend it on the defensive side, whereas they spent second, third round picks for the defensive side of the ball. And so I think that's why most of the excitement about tomorrow night is probably more geared toward the offense. with that being said, if you're somebody who is locked into the preseason, and we know that Chiefs Kingdom has various levels of people who will be interested in the first series, the first quarter, the second quarter, and then there's the people who will still be watching in the third quarter and on. And like I could see Ashton Gelati, I think that it'd be very interesting to see someone who has gone up in one-on-ones all these times against Josh Simmons and gotten beat to the point of wanting to fight Josh Simmons. That I want to see how that guy does against an opponent, because not only is it maybe a decent look into, well, what kind of player is Josh Simmons standing up to the point of frustration and heat-tempered punches versus other teams. And so I'm intrigued by that. But most of the big questions that I have about the Chiefs' defense are not things that I think will be answered in the preseason. Like, how does Christian Fulton impact Trent McDuffie and impact the ability of him to play in his best spot, which is the slot? We're not going to get to know that because Christian Fulton has practiced one time at training camp. And
he's been out there, though.
He's been out there. He got out there this week, and that's
Maybe
a positive.
He's taking the mental reps.
Yeah. He's being a veteran is what I would say of not necessarily having to be out there, but knowing that he can be. So that's kind of my thoughts on the defense. Drew Tranquil probably is not going to participate, I would think, given that he missed a couple practices with the back injury. Yep. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night, but who knows? Well, there's a lot of young guys in the second, third stringers, and it's like, if anything, I think that the biggest development defensively tomorrow night is probably a sadder development of, like, is Felix just a guy who is not on the roster? Like, at this point, given the unofficial depth chart that the Chiefs have released, of like, how true is that? I know that from our crews and you guys being up in St. Joe, like, what he has been in terms of falling on the reps, that tracks with the unofficial depth chart. And so I think that that's maybe bleak and not very optimistic for someone who's interested in watching tomorrow night. But that might be the biggest story, is a guy who was picked, a local guy who was picked in the first round a couple years ago, just not coming together at all. And that's sad, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I know a lot of local fans certainly cheering for Felix and Udike Uzama, but I mean, when we're out there at practice, you got to look at the guys who are taking reps and the guys who are making an impact. And one of those guys that you brought up is Ashton Gelati, and I think this is a guy I really think that could develop into a fan favorite, just because when you're out there and you see the way that this guy plays football, it's a little bit like Isaiah Pacheco, like where they have like this relentless drive, and like these guys just go at it like all for the entirety of the play. And I think that's a little bit, you saw that with the fight with Josh Simmons. I think Josh Simmons is obviously going to develop into a fan favorite, but you kind of saw, I mean, these are two rookies at training camp. I know it was really hot that day and they're in the midst of a long drill, but I mean, those are two rookies who really, really cared. And there's two rookies that have brought out a lot of the best of each other here in training camp. I know there have been some videos that have kind of surfaced, Josh Simmons tossing Ashton Gelati, but let's not act like Ashton Gelati has not performed well up here at Chiefs training camp. Very excited to see him and very excited to see how he performs on the field, because a lot of these guys, like, you can see what they do at practice, you can see what they do at training camp, you can see what they do against their own teammates, but some players just perform better on the field of play, and there are some players that really on the game field just shrink in many ways. So like when you see them go out there, we're gonna have to see what happens. But you kind of alluded to this earlier. It's not really something that we're going to see kind of be answered in the first preseason game, but a storyline on defense that I really want to look out for are people kind of, let's be on the lookout for this. As I think that Trent McDuffie is I think he's primed to have one of the biggest years of his career. I mean, entering this year into his NFL career, so many of the players in his draft class have been paid, and he has not been. And I think he can make the argument that he's the best corner of them all. And I mean, this is a guy that's going to be wanting and likely will command a contract that's more than $100 million.
Yeah.
And he knows that going into this season, and he knows that the Chiefs have been trying to talk to him, and they know they haven't got anything figured out yet. And this is, I mean, he's playing with a lot to prove, and he's playing playing for a huge payday. And so I think with Trent McDuffie, we're going to see the best of him this year because this is, he was a first-round pick, but all these guys in the NFL, they want to set up for that second contract. He's setting up for a big payday. Going to be excited to see that. Now, also something tomorrow, a question that we could see potentially answered going into this year is the new kickoff rules. A little bit of a different situation this year. Touchbacks are going to go all the way out to the 35-yard line. So a touchback is almost the exact same as if you kick the ball out of bounds. Because when you kick it out of bounds, a kickoff, it goes to the 40. Now touchbacks go to the 35. It's almost the same penalty. So what kickers are going to try to do this year is kick it inside the landing zone from the 20 all the way to the goal line. And the NFL predicts that that about 2/3 of kicks are going to be returned this year. It's certainly going to be exciting to see. But Gabe, we know the Chiefs have kind of always been on the forefront of special teams. Dave Toub, arguably the best special teams coordinator in the league, certainly one of the best, in the AFC for sure. How do you think this new kickoff rule is going to affect the games? Do you think we're going to see like long game-breaking returns out of this, or are we going to see basically not a whole lot and someone tackle at the 30?
I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical every time that they change the kickoff rules because it feels like it's one of those things that they hype up and then eventually coaches just opt for whatever is the least risky.
Football coaches are maybe the most risk-averse people on the planet. They will not take any risk unless they're Dan Campbell.
And specifically, there's almost a cultural mindset in sports of you're better to lose doing the same thing as everyone else than lose doing something that is unique.
Copycat league.
Because then you're a pariah and you're
no one
fool
likes to stand out like
and
that.
all of these different things. So I think that the league consensus will eventually just everyone will do the same thing. I don't think that there's going to be any like true innovators, and that's what we learned last year when we did this same kickoff rule just to touch back to the 30 instead of the 25, and the league continues to want to see kickoffs be returned. And I don't know if it is a thing where the Chiefs and where teams are returning kickoffs at a higher rate, that probably makes Nico Remigio more valuable. He was a guy who had a big kickoff return against the Texans in the playoff game. He was one of the best punt returners at Fresno State in college football when he was in college, and that we've seen that translate to the kickoff game in the NFL, and we know how important kickoffs can be given the momentum shifter of McCole Hardman back in the 2019 divisional playoffs against the Texans. So there's all those different things. I just think that I am selling the idea that this is some revolutionary thing, and if I'm proven wrong, we'll see, but I think that overall, the kickoff rate it's so much better than just every single team banging kicks through the back of the end zone and there being no suspense. So I'm good with that. I don't know if I love it going to the 35. It feels like it devalues. Like we're at the point with field goal kicking, all of these things where guys are hitting 60-yarders. Like you only need at that point what?
3 first
15
downs.
Yards, 18 yards to like get into
to get into a 60-yard range.
To 60-yard range. And like Brandon Aubrey of the Cowboys, Harrison Butker can hit those kicks. There are kickers with capable legs. I think that like devalues scoring to a certain point. So I don't know if I love that, but it's a necessary thing, I guess, if they want to get kickoffs to be something interesting. I think the more important kickoff rule that hasn't been changed yet is turning the onside kick from a basically nil probability outcome into something that's interesting, and the NFL still hasn't fixed that. Yeah. So that is, to me, the next step and something that's more important than what they've done already.
See, I think I'm on the flip side of you actually with this kickoff rule because when we're out there at training camp and you see the way that Butker kicks these balls, like it just looks like something – like just as a special teams coach, I know they're always trying to mitigate risk. It just always looks like something bad could happen. Like the ball takes a weird bounce, and all of a sudden there's a hole, and a guy could return it. It just like it looks a little bit like a funny play. Whereas in the past, like there really was no suspense. I even think last year teams really didn't have an issue. Like if they had a touchback, they're like, all right, like these kicks, these returns are maybe getting out to the 29. If we just let them have it at the 30, it's no big deal. But now with that whole touchback coming, those 5 extra yards just coming out to the 35, I think it's going to change the game. And just watching the way that, especially with the attention to detail that the Chiefs and Butker and Dave Toub are practicing this with, at least when we see them, this looks like it's going to, like they're planning for this to be a big part of the game. But I guess the flip side of that is Dave Toub's the best special teams coordinator in the NFL, and he's not going to want to get kind of outfoxed by another team there in that regard. So, hey, we're going to see what happens tomorrow night, 7 p.m. with those new kickoff rules. But we'll have a full recap of the game coming up on KC Sports Tonight tomorrow night, 10:35. You won't want to miss it. Now, we just have a little bit of time here on the back end of the show, but the Royals are still somehow hanging around in the playoff race. They are 57-58, and right now they are going to take on the Minnesota Twins for 3 games. The Minnesota Twins just sold a lot of their team at the trade deadline. Their fan base is angry. I assume their team is angry. They traded a lot of good players because they want to sell the team. It's just it's really not what you want to see in competitive sports. Like, this is the antithesis of what competition is all about. But the Royals 8.5 back in the division, 4 games back of the final wild card. Reasons to believe. All right, this is why Royals fans drink the Kool-Aid. The Royals are about to play 9 straight games against teams that are below 500, and I know fans are very excited about that. But guess what? The Royals are also below 500, so that it is what it is. Also, though, 22 of the next 32. This is how it is with the new Major League schedule. 22 of the next 32 are against the American League Central. Gabe, 4 games out of the last wild card spot. All right, here you go. Gun to your head. Are the Royals making the playoffs? Yes or no?
Ooh, man. Statistics and probability and odds.
This is a yes or no question.
As a numbers guy, I say no.
Yeah, I have to agree.
As a reality guy, I say that they will finish the year closer to making the playoffs than they are right now. Does that make sense?
No, I
Which
totally
says
hear you.
that
they're going to be like
they're
3
4
games out of the final wild card with 2 to play.
they're 4 games out, and I'm saying that I think that they could end up losing by like a game or a disaster situation. They do what they had last year, which is they tied a team. They tied the Mariners, and they won based on a head-to-head tiebreaker. Well, guess what? Right now, they're losing the tiebreaker to the Yankees. They lost all 6 games to the Yankees this season, who are in a free fall, and they could be the 3rd team in the wild card. They went 3-3 against the Rays. I don't think they're going to have to go up against the Rays, but the Mariners, they went 2-2 in Seattle against. They have a 3-game series against the Mariners in September in Kauffman, and I think that could be one of those things that like determines
absolutely
do you win that tiebreaker or not. But for any of those things to even matter, they have to make their hay against these bad teams. The Nationals, they're not very good. The White Sox are not very good. The Twins, you've heard me. I've been joking. They're the St. Paul Twins.
Yeah, St. Paul Saints, baby.
That's the AAA team for the Twins. And post trade deadline, they had to activate 9 guys from the AAA team to field their major league roster. Now tonight it's Joe Ryan on the mound. He's given the Royals tons of trouble.
He's an all-star.
You need Seth Lugo to match him. You need to build some momentum and go from there. But there's a huge opportunity for them, and I'm interested. I know that you're a seller. You have made that abundantly clear. But I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Well, I get the thing is with the Royals, like there's no point in not trying. Like they need to go out there, they need to try to win every single game. But we just need to sit there. I mean, is this team a World Series champion? No. Is this a team caliber of winning the American League Central? I think the answer is pretty clearly no. But what is the point in not trying? There is none. The Royals are going to go out there, they're going to give it their all, and we're going to see what happens. And hopefully they do make a push for the postseason. But right now they certainly have dug themselves quite a hole to get out of. But again, as we're saying, 22 of the next 32 against the Central, 6 against the Twins, 6 against the Tigers, 6 against the White Sox, 4 against the Guardians. And as Gabe said, they also have a series against the Seattle Mariners. So the major leagues wanted to have as many teams, as many markets in it for as long as they possibly could. This is kind of the trickle-down fallout of that. The Royals are still kind of hanging around in the race, even though they don't look like a World Series caliber team. But, hey, they're in the race, and this is what we want. We're caring about baseball and football at the same time. Gabe, we got about 30 seconds left. Anything else, or we got it?
I'm all good.
All right, there we go. Coming up at 6 o'clock, guys, you won't want to miss this. Neil Jones is out at the KU pump-up thing down at Corinth Square, and he's going to have a pretty big guest on our 6 p.m. Sportscast, so we'll see you then. And for now, take care.